Hello and welcome back to the Dakota Jet channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how to wire up some of the most common components you'll use in a home cockpit build. We'll go through toggle switches, LED push buttons, rotary encoders, potentiometers and even 7-segment displays. I'll show you how to wire them, connect them to an Arduino, program them in Mobiflight and then test them out inside Microsoft Flight Simulator. So whether you're just starting your own cockpit build or looking to expand with new panels, this should give you a clear idea of how it all comes together. Let's get started. So the first component we're going to wire into the board today is just the standard on-off toggle switch. This example is a miniature version, but it's exactly the same for a larger version as long as it's got 2 prongs on the bottom. A simple on-off switch, so just moves like that. And 2 prongs, one of them is a ground, so a negative connection, and the other is a positive connection, which goes into the digital pin on the board. So we're going to use 2 jumper cables that I've already gotten together. So the first one is going to go on the ground pin. Well, it doesn't really matter which one it goes on, they're both the same, one does one does the other, and that's that. So just put these on any of the pins. There we go. So, and then the next wire goes on the other pin. Then on the board, we just put one wire in the ground pin, and then the other wire in one of the digital pins. So we're just going to go and put it in pin 41. And that's it. It's as simple as that. So now, once this is plugged into the computer and we open up Mobiflight and assign it, we can assign it to a simple on-off toggle switch action in the sim. So we're going to go ahead and do that now.
So now we're back in Mobiflight. I'm going to show you how to configure the toggle switch to use in Flight Simulator. So I'm using a completely blank profile. So to start, we're going to go to Extras and Settings and over to Mobiflight Modules. These are all the boards currently plugged in. I'm going to be using the pedestal spare card, as I have quite a lot of spare digital pins and things on this board, so I'm going to be using this one for this tutorial. So we're going to go down to Add Device and we're going to add a button. We're going to call it Toggle Switch. And we assign that to pin 41 back when we wired it, and we're going to go to upload config and OK, and that's that section done. So now we need to assign that to an action in the sim. So to do that, we're going to click on Add Input Config. We're going to give it a name. So we're going to call it Toggle Switch Test. And now we're going to assign it. So the module is pedestal spare, the device is toggle switch, and input settings. So what do we want it to do in the sim? So we're going to assign it to a Microsoft Flight Simulator variable. We're going to assign it to Phoenix, is the vendor, and the aircraft is the A320, and we're going to assign it to, let's assign it to a light. So light We're going to search, we'll set it to the wing light, so that's a simple on-off switch. So wing light on, like that. And this requires an off as well, so we're going to go to on release and repeat the process. Wing for the Phoenix. So we want wing light off this time, and then just click OK. And that's it, programmed through Mobiflight, and we're ready to test it in Flight Simulator. So now in the sim for testing, I've started Mobiflight, and notice when I flick the switch we've just programmed, the switch in the cockpit goes on and off, and that's exactly what we want. This process can be replicated for pretty much any any input you want to do in the sim, particularly useful for functions that use the on-off toggle switch.
Moving on to a different type of toggle switch, but still very simple, is the on-off-on switch. This is slightly different to the other one we've just showcased. There are 3 positions on this, so the middle position is the off position, and then you can move it to the right, back to the middle, and then to the left. So it's 3 positions, and on the back there are 3 prongs, not just 2. So it's simply a case of attaching 3 of wires instead of 2. So the ones on the outside are the positives, and they will go to the digital pins on the board, and then the middle one is the negative, which is the ground pin, and we'll go to the ground pin on the board. So we'll just hook these wires on, and then hook it up to the board. So the middle one is going to go off to the ground pin, and then the 2 digital pins will use 23 and 25. And next we'll go into Mobiflight, configure it.
Now we're back in Mobiflight. I'm going to show you how to configure the on-off-on toggle switch. So similar to before, we're going to go to add a device, button, and we're going to select one of the digital pins as our input, so that's going to be pin 25, and we're going to call it right land off, and add another device, button, and the other pin on the toggle switch, which was pin 23, and that's going to be right land on, and upload config, OK, and now we need to assign it to an input. So we're going to add an input, and we're going to go down to pedestal spare, and device is right land off. So now on press we're going to go to Microsoft Flight Simulator, we're going to go to Phoenix, and just type in land. So we're going to program this to the landing lights, which on the Airbus have it's essentially a 3 position toggle switch, either off, retract or on. So we're going to mimic that with our toggle switch. So this is land off, so let's see what we've got. So lights. Okay, so the right landing gear off, that's what we want, and then we need to set on release, So this will be the middle position on the toggle switch. So we need to set that to retract, as that is the middle position on the light switch. So again, and Phoenix, lights, and we're going to go right, retract, and OK. So we're going to call that, I'm going to rename that to right land off to retract. Okay, and then we need to add another input for the other side of the switch, so add another input. We're going to go to pedestal spare, the device right land on, and we're going to go action type, Microsoft Flight Simulator, and repeat the process. So landing lights for the Phoenix, system is lights, and we want this side to be right landing light on, and we need to repeat the middle process for the retract. So on release, Flight Simulator, land, Phoenix, and retract, and OK, and then just give it a name, right land on to retract. Okay, and now we're going to go back into the sim and test it. So now for the testing stage for this on off on toggle switch, the switch is in the retract position. So now if I move it up to off, you can see in the sim it moves to off, and then further up to on, it moves to on in the sim, and that's exactly what we want, and it's reversed on the way back down. Simple. And that's how to get a 3-position toggle switch working in Microsoft Flight Simulator.
The next component I'm going to talk you through the wiring process of in this tutorial is this LED push button. These are the push buttons I've used in my project. I use them in the main instrument panel for the auto brakes, and also on the overhead panel for various buttons and switches. They are 18mm by 18mm, so to just cut into the wood, and then they just slot in like that. The reason why I chose these is I feel they most resemble the Airbus style Coreys without breaking the bank. These are quite cheap, and they seem to do the job quite well. I have had some problems with reliability. I found the LEDs sometimes go quite prematurely. However, they're cheap to replace. It's just more inconvenient than anything once the panels are fitted to replace them, but it's something I've just become accustomed to. Wiring these are quite simple. On the back, despite having quite a few pins, it is remarkably simple. So to start off, we're going to wire this into one of the digital pins. So this is a digital pin, so I'm going to use one of my wires. And I can't really use my jumper cables for these because of the different connectors on the back, so I'm just going to feed it through, in fact, and feed it through the connector, and then just loosely tighten it up around. And then ordinarily I would solder these in place. However, I'm not going to bother today because it's just the tutorial to show you guys how it's done. So I'm not going to solder them, but ordinarily I would. And then the next one is the ground connector. That's going to be these 2 pins. So what I tend to do is put the wire, again these are all loose, so make it tidy. I would put the wire through both the pins and then push the pins a bit closer together and just wrap the wire around like so. So that's the ground wire, and then the last one is the other input, which is going to be this pin and this pin together. So I'm just going to bend that pin out of the way and do the same thing as I did with the ground pin. And bring them together again and wrap the wire around like so. Just need to make sure that the wires aren't touching from the other connectors and they look okay. Yeah, so now we plug them into the board. So the ground connector will go into the ground pin, and the inputs will go into any of the digital pins. We're going to use 34 and 36, for example. And that's it, ready for Mobiflight configuration.
And now we're back in Mobiflight. I'm going to show you how to program the LED push button. So to start, we're going to go to Add Device, and we're going to add the button. I'm going to name the button just simple push button, and that is on pin number 34. And then we're going to add another device. This time we're going to add the LED output, which is on pin number 36. And we're just going to call that LED output. Upload the config, press OK a few times. And now we need to assign them. So to add the push button input, we're going to click Add Input. We're going to go to pedestal spare and push button. We're now going to select what we want that to do, so we're going to go flight simulator and something in the Phoenix. We'll set it to the APU bleed, I think, so APU bleed, and we're going to use this one, so the pneumatic APU bleed button press. Okay, and that's that done. Okay, so just name that to APU bleed button. And now we need to configure the LED, which is an output, so we're going to click Add Output Config. We're going to go over to Display. We're going to choose the module being our pedestal spare. We're going to select LED output, and we're going to choose our LED output. Now if I press test, you can see that the LED on the actual switch illuminates, so that's right. So, and then go back to sim variable. This is where we select what we want, when we want the LED to come on. So our vendor today is Phoenix Sim, and it is for the APU bleed. So now we select the lower one, because like I said with the Coreys, there are on the real Airbus, there is an upper and a lower LED. One of them is blue, one of them is amber, for the APU bleed button anyway. The amber one indicating the fault light. This isn't simulated, as my LED switches, they only have the one LED, so it's just going to be the lower. And then click OK. Rename it to the APU bleed LED. And now we go back into the sim and give it a test. So now we're back in the simulator. I'm going to show you the push button in action. So as you can see on the on-screen cockpit, the APU bleed switch is off and the LED is also off. Now if I press the push button, you'll see the physical LED light goes on, and as does the APU bleed LED light in the cockpit. And if we turn it off by pressing again, it reverses, which is exactly what we want it to do.
The next component I'm going to showcase to you in this tutorial is the Rotary Encoder. This example also has a push button, so when pressed inwards you can hear it clicking. So that could be assigned to an input. You can turn this left and right, like so. So this goes up through the panel, secured with a washer and a nut, and then you can put something on the top like a dial, so you can move it more easy. In the home cockpit, you can use these for various different purposes, such as radio panels or flight control units and whatnot. Prior to the days of the WinWing flight control unit, I built my own, and I use several of these to change speed, heading, altitude, etc. So they are very useful in the home cockpit environment. And I'm just going to talk you through the wiring. Again, this one has come pre-soldered from the manufacturer, so we don't need to touch these. And my jumper cables will slide straight over these. So we have clock, DT, SW, positive and ground. Clock and DT are both digital pins that control the left and right of the encoder. SW is another digital pin, which is for the switch, which is the press function. The positive is going to go to the 5 volts pin on the board, and the ground is the negative, going to go to a ground pin. So wiring it up again, we're going to use electrical tape on the finished product to stop these from moving. So clock, that goes to a digital pin. DT is going to go to another digital pin. Switch is going to go to the last digital pin for this component. Positive is going to go to a 5 volt supply on the board. And the last pin, the negative or ground, is going to go to a ground pin. Like so. And then just put some tape over the connectors themselves and around the wires just to keep it nice and neat and stops it from coming off. So now we're going to head back into Mobiflight and show you how to configure this.
So now we're back in Mobiflight. We're going to add the encoder to use in Flight Sim. So add device again, and we're going to go to encoder, and the left pin is pin number 51. The right pin is number 53. And we're just going to leave that as encoder. So then we're going to add the button. So add another device, which is the button that you press when you click in the encoder. So that is on pin number 49. Then upload the config. And we're going to add a new input. So delete that one. We're going to add an input. We're going to go to the device. It is the pedestal spare. We're going to use the encoder, and on the left it's going to be Flight Sim, Phoenix, and we'll use a radio command, I think. So radio 1 inner knob, increase, decrease, yeah, we'll do that decrease, and then we're going to copy it, and we're going to put it on the fast one as well. And then on the right, we're going to paste it again, but have it as increase. Copy that, and the same on the right fast. So that basically means that if you turn it right, it's going to increase it. If you turn it left, it's going to decrease it. By adding it and right fast, it means the faster you spin it, the faster it'll increase. So that's what we want. So click OK, and we'll call that the COM1 encoder inner. And then we're going to add another input for the button. So we're going to go to module, we're going to go to pedestal, button encoder, and on press we're going to go to flight sim and Phoenix, and we just need to find an input for this to go on. So we'll go to radio again, and we're just going to use it as a switch panel. So or transfer, maybe. Yes, we'll just use it as a transfer to transfer the active frequency to standby and vice versa. So we're going to copy and do the on release command, paste and release. Okay, and now we're going to go back into the flight sim and test it out. So now we're back in the sim, we're going to test out the encoder we've just programmed in Mobiflight. So we programmed it to be used with the COM1 selector. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the dial, and we'll see the on-screen cockpit, it will change. So as we go to the right, it's increasing it, and as we go to the left, it is decreasing it. And if you remember, we programmed the push button on it to change the frequencies between the standby and the active. So if we press that, notice on the on-screen cockpit the frequencies have changed between the two, and so on. The next component we're going to show you how to wire is the 7-segment display. These displays are very useful. I've got several in my setup for various things, such as radio comm panel, the transponder panel, and more recently I've built my clock using 3 of these. They come in different shapes and sizes, so this one is a small one with only 4 digits, but you can get them with a lot more digits. This is the example that I've used in my clock, as I only need the 4. So it would display the digits of whatever data is being transmitted through Mobiflight onto the displays. So this example has pre-soldered connectors so that my jumper cables can just slide straight on. However, some of the models, they don't have them soldered, and you just have to do that yourself. But again, it's not a very difficult task at all. Once you get the hang of soldering, it really isn't that difficult. So when you turn the board over, just ignore all this bit. This is all pre-done by the manufacturer. The only thing we're interested in are what wires we're going to be putting onto the end of these. So we have clock, diode, VCC and ground. So the first 2, clock and diode, they're going to be a wire. There's going to be a wire coming off each of them and going onto the digital pins on the board. The VCC is going to be the power supply. So an additional wire is going to come off there and go to the 5 volts pin, one of the 5 volt pins on the Lego board. So that, and then the ground pin is the negative, and that will go off to the ground pin. So we're going to do that now. So we're going to start with the digital pins.
jumpers just slot straight over, they're very handy. These are the digital pins, so any of the pins on the board, we're going to go for 32 and number 23 and 25. And then we're going to go to the next pin, which I believe is the 5-volt pin, VCC, correct? So slide the wire on. So as you've just seen, these do move about a bit. So what I tend to do once they're all on is just secure them with some electrical tape. And I've never had a problem with them coming off or anything. So always secure it with tape. And then that goes into the power section, so 5 volts. And then the final pin, which is the negative, goes to the ground pin. So now all you need to do is just secure there with some electrical tape, maybe put some more there just to bunch the wires together. And we're going to head over to Mobiflight and get it configured.
To configure the 7-segment display in Mobiflight, first we need to add the device. So we click Add Device and we click LED 7-segment and we select our device. So it's one of these are the only ones that are configured, are able to be configured in Mobiflight, and ours is today the TM1637 and it's a 4-digit. And the DIN is on pin 23 and the clock was on pin 25. And we'll just call that transponder code and hit upload. And now we need to add that as an output. So to add it as an output, click Add Output Config and go to Display, Pedestal Spare and Display Module. We're going to select transponder code, and because we're going to be using all 4 digits, as transponder codes are 4 digits, we're going to tick all of them and we're going to click OK. Sorry, no we're not, we're going to go back to sim variable and we're going to assign it in the sim. So we're going to assign it to the transponder. Let's try and get it down a little bit. So Phoenix 320 radio, and let's see what we've got on here. There we are, transponder selected code display. That's what we want. And then just click OK. And now we'll go into the sim and show you that working. So now you can see we're back in the sim and we've got the transponder on my pedestal, which I've just replaced with the one that we've used to wire up, as it was a little bit faulty, that one, so I have just replaced that with that one. So now with that config in Mobiflight, if I change the squawk code to 1111, sorry, if I press clear and 1111, it changes it on the actual thing, which is what we want it to do. So then if it goes to 3232, it changes it to 3232. So that's what we want. The last component I'm going to be demonstrating in this tutorial is the potentiometer. Potentiometer is an analog input, so we won't be using any digital pins this time. There's no push buttons or anything fancy like that. It's just a simple dial, left and right, with a stop at the end, so you can't physically go any further. So it's not a full 360.
I have numerous potentiometers in my setup. On the overhead panel section, I have 3 of these to control the temperature in the flight deck, aft and forward cabins, and they also are responsible for controlling the lights in my setup, so the navigation display, PFD, ECAMs, brightness, that sort of thing as well. So to wire them, we have 3 pins coming off, and I'm going to use my jumper cables again. So the middle wire will go on like that, and that's going to go off to a analog. In fact, first I'm going to show you the board again. So before we showed you the digital pins, we're not going to be using them for these. We're going to be using the analog pins, as it's an analog component. So the middle of the potentiometer, the middle pin, is the analog input, so we're just going to put that on there, and that's going to go off to A0 on the board, which is A0 analog 0 pin. The next wire is going to be on one of the pins either side, and that's going to go to the ground pin. And then the final wire is the positive. So that's going to go on there and go off to the 5-volt supply on the board. The usual things, just tape them up, keep them nice and secure. So I found that my jumper cables aren't great with these, and the connections are a bit looser, so I do personally solder these on. I use a different type of wire, but for the purposes of this tutorial, this will do for demonstration purposes. So we're going to go off to Mobiflight now and show you how to program this.
So this is the last part of the Mobiflight tutorial. I'm going to show you how to do the analog potentiometer in Mobiflight. So to do it, we're going to add a device, and we're going to go to analog input. It's on pin A0, analog 0. I'm going to leave that as it is, but you can change that as per your requirement, either high sensitive or low sensitive. I'd normally just leave it there. And we're going to call this, we're just going to leave that as analog input, and click upload config. Now this is where it gets a little bit different. This is where it's a little different to the digital input. So what we're going to do is we're going to click add input as usual. I'm going to go to the usual pedestal spare. Device is analog input. And notice there is only on change. So what we're going to do is we're going to click Microsoft Flight Simulator, and then we have to open up HubHop, which is done by clicking this button here, and it brings up a web page where the community add codes into for presets into the website. So we're going to hop over to there now and have a look at that. Now we're in HubHop. We're going to select the Phoenix Sim A320. Systems will program it to use for a light, I think. So a light control. Can't find it. Okay, a light, there we are. And then on input/output, we're going to go input potentiometer, and then we're just going to find an input. What do we do? We'll do main instrument panel integral light knob set. So we'll go to that, and then you want to copy this code. So highlight it, Control C, and then back over into Mobiflight. So now we're back in Mobiflight on the screen we were on previously. Before going over to HubHop, we're going to click Show Preset Code, and we're going to paste our code from HubHop just there, and then click OK, and that's it. So now we're going to test it in the sim and see what happens. So now that we're back in the sim, I'm going to test the potentiometer we've just programmed in Mobiflight and see what happens. Remember, we programmed this so it would control the main instrument panel integral lighting. So if I turn the dial, you see in the sim the lights adjust and become on and dim as I turn it, and the dial inside the cockpit also turns, which is exactly what we want it to do. So that's that all programmed.
Thanks for watching this wiring tutorial. I hope you found it useful and maybe even a bit inspiring for your own home cockpit projects. If you've got any questions about wiring, Mobiflight or cockpit building in general, drop them in the comments and I'll be happy to help. Don't forget, new videos go live every Monday at 9 AM UK time. And in next week's video, I'll be doing a full talkthrough of my home cockpit build, including detailed plans, dimensions, and design decisions I made along the way. So if you're thinking about starting your own build, you don't want to miss that one. As always, please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you enjoyed the video. It really helps support the channel. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next Monday.